So our task is to try to put into words some of the feeling and the spirit that we are experiencing here. And I want to kind of zero in on the idea of you're hearing that little drummer boy for the first time and taking your breath away. And the idea of how this season is so amazing for children. So several years ago, Blythe and I attended worship at a Metropolitan Community Church. For those of you who don't know, Metropolitan Community Church is the church that was founded initially back in 1968 to be specifically open to lesbian, gay, bisexual, and transgender persons. And it's a Eucharistic kind of fellowship. In other words, the ritual of the Lord's Supper or communion is central to the Metropolitan Community Church. And they have a custom there that they invite family units to come forward and take communion together. Because back in 1968, in the LGBT community, family units or spiritual, loving units were not always affirmed in public spaces. And so this was a very meaningful experience for Blythe and I. And this morning, for the first time in our church, we had communion. And we did communion in that way. And you'll see where I'm going with this. And family units came up. And the very last family, Blythe and I served the communion this morning. And the very last family that came up was a grandmother, a daughter, and a grandson. And the look in that grandson's eyes as he took communion for the first time, he was only about 5, in this season, with the Christmas tree behind us. And the lights were of the Christmas tree were actually reflected in his eyes. And he was so filled with wonder and amazement. It was just an amazing take your breath away moment. Yep. Very quiet, very open, very young.
Wonderful.
Very Advent.
Very Advent. It was the Mormon Tabernacle choir version of The Little Drummer Boy. That's the one we grew up on. And I didn't understand what Mormons were, nor did I know what a tabernacle was. But I knew that the music on this album was hissing and popping and scratched so badly because my dad had to play it over and over and over again. So almost as much as the music was the hiss and the pop and the crack on the album. First thought. Second, something about being young and understanding that the little drummer boy didn't have a gift to bring except for his talent, and I think that really resonated with me as a little kid and stays with me today as an adult, teaching people that everybody's got a gift to bring. But I want to move to the breath. This wonderful myth of creation that is in the Christian scriptures, or the Judeo-Christian scriptures, of God blowing the breath of life into the earth person, into the Ha-Adam, to the Adam. I love that. I mean, there's lots of stories about how we got created, but this idea that God's own breath would animate the lungs of the human is beautiful to me. And it's interesting that the words for breath in the Hebrew is ruach, which is breath, wind, spirit. In Greek, pneuma, breath, wind, spirit. Those words are the same, breath, wind, spirit. So there's something about the breath, Fred, in us, to enliven us, enthuse us, inspirit us, is prayer. And Ulanov says prayer is primary speech. So the very first prayer we have is breathing.
I'm also reminded in moments like this, because we have people here of different faith traditions, of different ethnicities, of different life experiences, how amazing this season is for all of us, and how the symbol of giving birth, whether through breath or actual giving birth, is just something that binds us together, so that when there is birth in our midst, even though there be differences, we're able to overcome those differences and celebrate with one another. So, as some of you know, a few months ago, a couple of us, Jacqui being among us, we were in Oman. And we were doing a gathering across religious lines. And we were with a couple of Salafi scholars, conservative Muslim scholars. Mm-hmm. And one of the members of our group was a rabbi from the U.S., and these scholars were from Pakistan. And one of them was pregnant. And what happened through the course of interpersonal relationships and forging a bond between us, despite very big differences, was that the rabbi put his hands over the belly of the woman who was pregnant and said a blessing to the child. And this was tremendously important to her and is an expression that transcends the differences we share and speaks to this season, I think, for all of us, of expectation and hope and birth.
I think that's beautiful. Then I'm thinking about babies coming into the world, swimming in amniotic fluid inside, and then coming out and having to gasp a big gulp of air in order to push the other out and make their lungs viable. And I'm also thinking about being in Oman and, you know, going to that mosque, that incredible mosque. This mosque was so gorgeous. And it was so hot outside. Remember how hot it was? It was like hot and dry. And when we walked into this mosque was air conditioned. But it really did feel, when you opened the door, like the fresh breath of Allah came out to cool you and greet you and invite you. So there was something about the fresh breath of God. So you see, I'm on this breath thing still with the babies and the
breath and birth.
Breath and birth.
Breath and
breath
birth
and
are
birth.
good things.
Breath and birth are working for me. But there's something about, Bob, that you're saying around the way we're different. You know, every human being breathes. Every human being breathes. It is a part of our human existence to take in and push out air. It actually is the thing that divides us. And we all breathe each other's breath, whether meant to you or not. We breathe each other's breath. Okay.
Beautiful.
Some thoughts for tonight.
Some thoughts for today.
Thank you.
Thank you.